Okay. And just as a reminder, these are public meetings. They are recording. So please don't put anything private or anything that you wouldn't want to be shared on our website into the chat or into the video or audio feeds. Thank you. Let me just get the PowerPoint up. There we go. And I'm not on the first page. Give me a second here. And take off something else. Okay. So welcome everyone. It is March 25th, 1:00 p.m. This is the IDEAS Advisory Council public meeting. Brian or Michelle, I will turn it over to you as our chairs to officially begin the meeting.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone has had a little bit of time to enjoy the sun. So as Corey said, yay, we're here. We made it. We have quorum. Excellent. So let's begin with allowing folks to introduce themselves. So I'm not sure of what the next slide is, but Lynn, are you? Okay, thank you so much. So can we start by just introducing ourselves, and I will let my co-chair introduce himself first.
Great. Thank you so much for your leadership, Michelle. My name is Brian B. B.E. like be who you are. And I have spent a lifetime in and out of special education. And I work for the University of Colorado JFK Partners. And I have been re-elected the co-chair. I'm a white guy with a graying beard, and I'm zooming in from home today with a yellow collared shirt. And I'm privileged to serve alongside each of you as one of the voting members. This community matters to me, the IDD community and Denver. Pass.
Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna introduce myself last. So if there's another member that would like to introduce themselves, I'd love to let them do that. Self-introduce and tell us about you.
Jessica Reichel, and I am a white female with brown hair and two braids, and I have like lavender long sleeve shirt on.
And thank you, Jessica. And who else would like to go next?
Chris has their hand up in the chat there.
Oh, perfect.
Chris, you want to introduce yourself? Here.
My name is Chris.
What else do you want to say? Do you want to type something? Space.
Hi. Free. Today. With. IDDEAS. Council. I free today with IDDEAS Council.
Anything else? Are you done?
Thanks, Chris. Good to hear you, man.
Yes.
Awesome, Chris. I'm glad to see you, brother. Uh, next.
Hello, everyone. This is Alexa Gagne. Happy to be with you all today. I am a 43-year-old female with brown hair, coming to you from my home office today and wearing a white and brown striped shirt. And I'm very happy that the sun is out and it's getting warmer. I thrilled. So thank you.
So let's see. I believe that leaves me as the last voting member of the council. So I am Michelle Dumais. I am African American Muslim female. I'm in my home office. Today I'm wearing a blue scarf, pink shirt, and I'm here to serve, love this council and all its members and all its supporters. And this is my first time as a co-chair, so go easy.
Thank you, Misha. I'm going to jump in here. My name is Corey Boyle. I am a non-voting member. I am a member of Denver Human Services, the IDEAS team. I serve as the staff liaison for between Denver Human Services and the IDEAS Advisory Council, which means that I am the one who helps to schedule, set agendas, and ensure that we all kind of come together today. I am a white male presenting individual with blue square rimmed glasses. I've got a headset on, short, dark brown hair, and some stubble on the lower half of my face, wearing a dark blue shirt. And I have a Denver Human Services cityscape background behind me showing some of the skyscrapers. I'm going to just hold on to the mic for a bit, go backwards a few slides, and just talk about some of our ground rules and what IDEAS is. Sorry, I went back a little too far. So, IDEAS is the Intellectual and Developmental Disability Equitable Access to Services. Thank you all for coming and hanging out with our council and with us today. IDEAS partners with the community to manage local taxpayer dollars dedicated for Denver residents with intellectual and developmental disabilities and developmental delay. We strive to make Denver an inclusive community where people with IDD feel welcomed, valued, and empowered to live the lives they envision for themselves. And our council is comprised of Denver residents with lived experience with IDD. The IAC, which is what we call our council, meets monthly to discuss all sorts of topics relevant to Denver residents with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Using community feedback, individual knowledge, and expert presentations, the council provides recommendations to Denver Human Services about the best way to prioritize funds and programs. Some ground rules. As a reminder, please be respectful to everyone who is attending the meeting. That means that whatever we talk about here is conducted professionally and does not carry over outside of our meetings in any kind of ill will or inappropriate manners. Please stay muted, raise your hand and then unmute to speak. Introduce yourself when you speak so that those who cannot see you know who is talking. Stay on topic and consider if your point that you are making speaks for the benefit of people in Denver who have IDD, meaning that as we are here to represent community members as opposed to our individual interests. All of our meetings are public and recorded. That includes the chat. So everything that we say and we do gets posted publicly onto our website. You can go to denvergov.org/IDDEAS to see all of our old meetings. We've recently actually moved some stuff around too to help make that a little bit more organized. But all of that will be posted. So avoid putting things in the chat like your address or phone numbers, other things like that that you don't want the public to just be aware of. Votes will happen in the chat as it helps us to publicly memorialize them. Ensure that your chat is set to communicate with everyone. So you need to click the little blue button in the chat, have it go down to everyone. If you do make a mistake and chat the hosts and panelists, I'll do my best to keep an eye on that, copy and paste it so that everybody can see it. Please remain safe during our meetings. If you need to, you are welcome to leave and then rejoin when you're in a safe position. We don't need to be voting or doing anything while we're driving, anything like that. Always make sure you're abiding by laws and being safe while you're here. Always respect and honor the Denver Code of Ethics. No AI or other third-party accounts or apps will be used in our meeting unless you have requested permission beforehand and are using it as a point of accessibility or in some other kind of noted need. And then have fun, speak up, and advocate for your community. We did introductions. I'm going to go right through that. And then I will turn it back over to our chairs.
Okie dokie. So, I believe that we need to, if we do need a little bit of time, everyone has received the meeting minutes for the previous meeting. So, if there, are there any revisions that are needed? And I'm sorry, I broke the first rule. This is Michelle speaking. So I should ask, are there any revisions to the minutes? Okay, then since I don't hear any requests for revisions, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve them, please. And you can come off of mute and make your motion.
This is Alexa Gagne. I motion to approve. Come off camera moments.
Okay, thank you, Alexa, so much. Could we have a second for that motion?
So this is Corey speaking. Alexa has motioned to approve the meeting minutes from the February 25th meeting. We need is one more council member, so Chris, Jessica, or Brian, that could be any of you, to simply say, I second, and that is you just approving that initial motion and saying, yep, I'm cool with that. And then we move into voting. So it's low risk. Seconding doesn't, nothing to be worried about. And it's just a point of process. It just helps make sure that as we're doing all this, we have council members who are involved in backing each other up.
This is Jessica and my second.
Okay, so Alexa motioned and Jessica second, so now we can go to the chat and we can vote. And I see that Brian is abstaining. Okay, so this is Michelle again, and I see that Jessica has abstained. And so Corey, do we need,
So we have 5 attending members today. So we would need
Okay.
3 out of 5 yeses to approve those. If
okay,
we don't approve them for whatever reason, that is okay. We will need to talk about that and discuss perhaps why, and work on getting those approved so that as we host them publicly and we have them as a recording of what we did as public business, we need council members to approve that and just make sure like, yeah, it's hunky dory. if I need to change anything in it, I'm totally fine to go and do that, edit whatever I need to edit. Just let me know what I need to do for that.
Okay, this is Michelle again. I have a question, Corey. Um, if it's a situation where folk didn't get to it in time to read them, are we able to, if we don't have public comment, are we able to regain a little bit of time there, allow folk to look at them to then approve them? Or do we have to approve them in the beginning of the meeting?
We don't have to approve them in the beginning. We usually do that as kind of a point of
Yeah.
preference. Is how we've done it before.
Sure.
And but there's no reason that we have to do it now. We can do it later. We can do it at any time. The one thing that we like to do is make sure that we prove that we've done this publicly so that um everybody knows that, like, it's not just me saying they approved it, it's good. We want to build that community trust. But
Yep.
if people haven't had a chance to read it yet, that's totally fine, and I assume that's maybe why folks are abstaining. We have a few options. So there is no public comments were submitted today. So we do have that block of time on our agenda today that we can go through and talk about them if we'd like, or I can resend them with today's meeting minutes too, and they can be approved at the next meeting as well. I believe that has been done before. Just keep in mind, if
Yes.
we take that route, it means you're going to have to read two documents before the next one, which might also be a lot. So, yeah, so for those who weren't at the last meeting and therefore are maybe abstaining for that reason, that's totally fine. And those who maybe didn't get a chance to read it today, again, that's totally fine. We can figure it out. It's not a huge deal. So if we'd like to move off of this, let me know, and I'll gladly just move on to the next agenda item.
Sure. I'd like to move. I'm reading the comments, and so what I'd like to do is let's move off of it, and then let's see if we stay on time and on track, if we can revisit it later in the public forum time. With that being said, it's time for the council member updates, but I do believe that the council member to provide the updates is actually not here. It's used, our CAC member, is not here. So let's see if we have, any council members that want to share any updates from other parts of the community.
Hello, this is Alexa Gagne. Just wanted to share a small tidbit. Last Friday was World Down Syndrome Day. And so it's just a day that recognizes people living with Down syndrome. And so my 3-year-old daughter, Colette, and my family and I went to a place called Gigi's Playhouse. It's over in Lakewood. It's a really wonderful resource if anyone hasn't looked that up. It is specific to people with Down syndrome, and they serve both children up through adults with classes and different resources. So I just wanted to mention that as something very cool, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexa. This is Michelle again. I'd like to make mention that at this time, the JBC, which is the body that oversees the budget for the state, is actually in session right now. And they have been in session for the past, I think, 17 or so days. They've been in session for quite a bit. And this is a very impactful group as they set the budget for the state for a lot of our members. And the state is proposing a little under $1 billion, saying that there's a little under $1 billion in cuts that they need to make. And to date, we have some families that are tracking this very closely. And as to date, the state has, the JBC has looked at making $330 million worth of cuts. That means roughly, if you do that math, there's 700 million short. So I think if we all go into our cushions, we can somehow pull out the $700 million for the state. We can give it to them. I'm sure they will accept check, cash, Bitcoin, gold bullion. I haven't heard that they are very particular about how they want to take this money, except from Colorado residents, especially folk who are in our community. But as a member, as a point of information, just to let people know, that's when they're looking at this right now.
This is Corey speaking. Thank you for that update, Michelle. That was wonderful. If nobody else has any other updates, I will move right ahead because as Michelle mentioned, our CAC member and our non-voting member who also attends the CAC with RMHS are both not here today. So we'll hear from them next month, I'm sure.
So Brian, brother, it's your turn.
Thank you so much. I've called this next section breathing in uncertainty or breathing through uncertainty. And there's a slide on the screen that we're sharing right now that says this is an opportunity for council members to engage with each other, to reflect on some current affairs mindfully and intentionally. We're going to keep this time both professional and also very human. There are lots of councils that inform Denver Human Services. This is the Community Advisory Council. We're not here because we have our social worker degree or our public health masters, although we might have that. We're here because of our lived experience. That's why we applied. That's why we were interviewed and then selected to be here. And so we have lived experience with uncertainty. I'll ask Lynn if you're doing this slide or the screen sharing, to go ahead. Well, I was going to ask you to drop it, but I'll tell you what, I'll just modify it for myself. I'm going to make it real small and make you all real big.
Okay. Brian, do
visitors.
you mind? Sorry, this is
Yeah, go ahead.
Corey. Sorry.
Please go ahead, Corey.
I'm running the slides, just so you
Oh,
know. So let
okay.
me know what you want me to do there. I cannot raise my hand while I do this. It won't let me. So I
Right,
have
right.
to just interrupt you. I'm so sorry about that. To break my own rule of decorum there.
Yeah.
One thing that I would like to mention before we get into it more, and I'm fine to drop these if we want to just talk more humanly. But
Mhm.
before we get into that, just a reminder, everybody, we want to facilitate human connection. I want you all as a council to lead these discussions how you feel fit. Let's just keep in mind, though, that these are public, these are recorded, and these are professional meetings that involve public business. And so as we breathe together, as we do things that help us, let's just stick to the point of these, and I'll let Brian speak to that, and make sure that these don't become anything that is in any kind of very derogatory or targeted towards anybody either here or outside of here, as emotions maybe get heightened or lessened or anything like that. I just wanted to put that
Right.
out there and make that kind of clear as a, keep it respectful kind of thing.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
but
you.
let me know what you would like me to do with the slides, Brian.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you to not screen share the slides, but that might actually be useful for some. So I just changed my setting where I made that small and then made the people bigger. So that's what I'm doing for myself, and each one can navigate. So let me say a little bit more about this, and then I'll invite you to speak. And when I say you to speak, I'm aware there are many visitors and there are many professionals here, and you don't even have a way to speak. You can't put something in the chat, or you can't raise your hand, or you're watching this recording later. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your presence. So you'll just witness or watch us voting members discuss this. Last month, February, after we got done with our entire meeting, I just had this heaviness or a feeling anyway, of like, is all of this even going to matter in a month or two? And I have my reasons for why I felt that way. And maybe some of you have your reasons, and they may be the same or they may be different. And it just made me realize, there's been a lot of things that I've lived through where I did not know what the outcome was going to be. And I suspect that many of you also. In fact, the reason we're here, here's just a couple. Living at all, just even being alive, is an uncertainty. Waivers, supports, day programs, recreation, transportation, schooling. And I could go on. These are some things that we do our best to create structure and certainty, but at the end of the day, there's a level of uncertainty. So it might be personal, it might be professional, it might be community, it might be legislative, it might be financial, whatever. And I just wanted to make a space for letting you share some of your voice. If you feel like, why are we even doing this? Is it going to matter? Or I'm feeling worried or uncertain about whatever. So that's all. This is a place to just let that breathe. So I'll be quiet for a few without asking a direct question, and just if there are folks that would like to, please feel free to unmute. As Michelle reminded us, please say your name, or you're welcome to raise your electronic hand and I'll call on you. And I'll pass for now. Would it help if I share with you some things where I've lived through some uncertainty, or invite you to share some things how you have lived through some uncertainty? I see one head nod. I see another head nod, so I'm going to do that, but feel free to interrupt me. Put something in the chat. Well, let me just start by saying I feel a certain sense of, well, I said that there was like a heaviness, or anyway, a sense of some things that were unsaid, and I feel a certain level of, well, there. Now we've said hello to the elephant in the room. Are you familiar with that expression? Imagine you're in a room and there's an elephant and you're like squished up against the wall, and like everybody's just trying to have a regular conversation, and you're like, it's kind of hot in here, you know? So just, you didn't even move the elephant out, but if you can just acknowledge, like, does anybody else smell that? Just acknowledging it. So, yeah, so COVID was a huge uncertainty, and we've all that are here now, we lived through that. A tremendous amount of social unrest worldwide, and then some hot spots, some of it throughout the Denver metro region. Navigating SSI, Social Security Income, or SSDI, Social Security Disability Income. If that is set for you, and you either get it or you don't, fine. But remember when you were like, remember when that was a question mark for months, and months turned into years? Or your IEP, or your 504, accommodations for schooling for those with disabilities. I'll pause again for a while, and no pressure to talk, but you're welcome to speak up if you wish. This is not a one and done. The answer has to be obtained today. I just wanted to acknowledge some things that we may all be dealing with. Hey, Jessica, please share.
I guess for me, when when I'm dealing with uncertainty, I try to make, like if I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do I do this and that, how is this gonna happen, how's that gonna happen? I tell myself if I need to take a break from that process, it's okay. But also, um, I pray, and I also just try to slow myself down. Sometimes I will see if someone around me might need help to distract myself, or sometimes I will look at, okay, well, what do I have actual control over? Like, what can I do for myself? Um,
Jessica, may I pause you just a moment?
yeah,
Hold that thought. I just want to check in. Are you folks able to hear Jessica okay? I just want to see some head nods or some thumbs up. Okay. All right. Please continue, Jessica.
um, so like for me, I try to look at what I do have control over, and then B, if I need to break those things down into smaller steps. Like if I have 5 things on my plate that I need answers to, I'll pick one to start with. And if I need to break that down, then I would do that too. I try to take it as small as I need to. And definitely reach out for help if I need to as well. If I'm like, okay, I have to get these things done and I can't do it on my own, where can I get the help? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And there are a couple of thank you for these tips, Jessica. Michelle put in the chat, and I summarized a couple of the ones. Others with comments, questions?
This is Alexa. I just wanted to say thank you, Jessica and Brian, just for being vulnerable and sharing. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Jessica.
I just wanted to add another couple of things that I just remembered too is I try to limit like sensory input or anything that might overwhelm my nervous system as well. And that can help being able to slow down the anxiety train.
I completely, this is Alexa again. Thank you, Jessica. I completely agree and resonate with everything that you said. And I think we all, COVID, Brian was such a good example of a time when, yeah, everything seemed upside down in many ways, and anxiety and all the different, thoughts that we can have in those uncertain times. But I think just one thing I wanted to share, I resonate with Jessica on faith and limiting some of those outside um, entities that can cloud our mind sometimes, and being outside in nature and just finding what works for you, because we all are different in what helps us reset and recharge. But I think the other thing I just wanted to say was just what a resilient, that people are resilient and we are stronger than we think we are in all of the uncertainty. So I just wanted to remind everyone of that, that even through these big, huge challenges that we're all facing in many ways, we are resilient and we can do hard things.
Thank you so much, Alexa. And you're getting floating hearts are flying by the screen. Just to say, I see you, Chris. I see you with some energy. Jessica, oh, hi. Hello again. I forgot the lady's name next to Chris. I remember I've met you. Jessica, I saw you perhaps raising your hand.
I just had a question. Because I was just wondering, like, how do we, like, what are ways that we can better understand things that might be affecting our community? Because if we don't know what's going on, how can we, like, speak up about it, both in regards to our own needs and experiences, but also, like, for the community as a whole?
Saying that back to you, you said, how are we going to know unless people speak up?
No, how
No.
are we gonna know, like, what we're potentially facing, specifically as the IDD community? Like, how do we learn? Like, how are ways that we can learn,
Sure.
ways that we can learn about what is going on more specifically, and then therefore we can choose if we wish to be able to have at least some sort of say in how it might go.
Sure. Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts to that. I want to let you folks speak up to Jessica's question. If you want, I can reiterate it or she can. But I'd like to hear what you have to say. That's really on point to what this space is for right now. Would you like me to restate it? How are we learning about Denver and IDD, what people are facing in particular? What are their challenges and what are their successes is what Jessica put out there. This advisory council is one main attempt to address that. And there are other, anybody from DHS want to speak to that? Corey, please.
Yeah, I wrote down your question here, Jessica. I think that's actually an extremely worthy question, and I think helps funnel our uncertainty into action a little bit by trying to seek, like, well, what's going on? How do we know? I think do your best to connect with your communities. There's a lot of different community providers and people who work in the disability space in the Denver space who will then also share out, like, hey, this is going on. I mean, Michelle gave an update earlier today about the JBC meeting and stuff, and so that right there is we're already learning, we're sharing information about stuff that might affect us. Another good one, I'm not going to put too much of a plug in for them, but Alliance is an organization that will help track bills and put in information for the community in Colorado here to know about. And so if you go to their website, they can give information a lot about, things that are coming up, laws and other things, political things that might affect our communities in different ways. So those are some nice ones. If as a tangible answer to that. And I'm sure that there's more that maybe the rest of my team could think of too right now. But I guess I should put a plug in. Last week, probably should have said this during our updates. Last week, we went to the Capitol for IDD Awareness Day, and this was a bit of it was a day at the Capitol where a lot was going on, different bills were heard and everything, but Alliance was there as well, giving information about here are the bills that pertain to employment or other things that might affect people with disabilities here in Denver. And so that, again, that was like an informative thing. And so I guess my point there is also just kind of keep tabs on your local government, what the government's doing and stuff. And there's denvergov.org that'll show you information about Denver specifically, but there's also other Colorado things for anybody that might interact in other areas. Go.
Was that me? Oh, the go ahead. Just a couple of other quick resources in terms of information. I believe it's the Arc of Colorado, has a newsletter that is often talking about what's going on in terms of legislation and funding, updates about the sorts of budget information that Michelle was sharing earlier, as well as the CCDC, Colorado Cross Disability Coalition, also shares information around legislation and budget, both at the state level and also some of the federal information as well.
Thank you so much, Corey and Lynn. So we've heard a lot of different ways to cope. One is reflecting on what have I already lived through that also had some uncertainty. Jessica mentioned leaning into faith or even practical steps like chunking it down and asking for help. Corey helped us think about some local governance or government, and Lynn helped us think about other agencies and advocacy groups as well. No big insight or surprise. We're not here right now in this space to solve all of that. I just wanted to acknowledge it, and we can have more space in the future if we feel like if there's something unsaid that you would like space for, we get to co-create what this advisory council is. So thank you. Thank you for your kind attention and just a space to acknowledge, to stay breathing. Yeah, and thanks for following up with that in the chat, Corey. All right, please feel free to reach out to Corey, myself, Michelle, Michaela, if you have other thoughts and you want to add something to a future agenda. It might be related to this topic of uncertainty, or it might be another topic. Please, we want to hear from you. Pass.
So, Brian, if we're keeping with the agenda items, it's your turn to lead this slide in this discussion about what is IDD and communication and labels. So go ahead, Brian. And
Thank you.
that was Michelle. And I'm sorry. And before Brian was Lynn. So just want to make sure that we know who was speaking.
Thank you so much. So here's another one that I felt is big, and you know, this whole group is centered around intellectual developmental disability, and yet I'm not sure in the years that I've been coming here that we ever paused to say, what is that? And when I say what is that, there's a couple of different ways to come at the answer. One is like, you know, what is the official definition for some of the providing agencies? Another one is like the medical model, and maybe they came up with that phrase. And then another one may or may not be related to that, and that's just the lived experience. So we do have to operate within many of the official definitions of intellectual developmental disabilities, and that's displayed on a slide right now. Thank you, Corey, for collating that. And we have the Colorado State definition, and then we have from the IDDEAS webpage what it is. Is there a volunteer that would be willing to unmute and just read that first one that's from the denver.gov IDEAS page? And just read to that definition there.
I can, Brian, if you
Please.
like me to. Sure. This is Corey speaking. So on the slide displayed for everybody right now are just some definitions. So from our FAQ site, this is kind of a colloquial definition that we tried to make understandable and accessible to any audience, knowing that IDD might not be like fully used as common vernacular. But IDD, or intellectual and developmental disabilities, is often used to describe differences in a person's brain and how those differences show up in their life. For many people, these differences, also recognized as disabilities, are part of daily life and do not define them. And then below that, I put the Colorado state definition, well, a description of the Colorado state definition. I should say this isn't verbatim what is in that because it is pretty somewhat lengthy and jargony. But these links here are clickable. And so anybody who has access to this PowerPoint, which will be posted on our site, you can click these and go right to these resources. You can go to denvergov.org/IDDEAS as well to look at both of all of our resources and definitions that we use, as well as other resources and descriptions that you might be able to find there. But according to the Colorado State definition, IDD appears before the age of 22 and is attributable to an intellectual or developmental disability or related conditions that may include diagnoses like Prader-Willi syndrome, cerebral palsy, autism, or other neurological conditions that result in impaired general intellectual functioning or adaptive behavior. General intellectual functioning is determined by IQ scores typically, and adaptive behavior is determined by behavioral scales such as the Vineland Scale of Adaptive Behavior, typically. And then it's not attributable if the above conditions are a result of only a physical or sensory impairment or mental illness. And that's all from the Colorado State definition. The reason I put that in there as related to this conversation is just to clarify that when we talk about IDD and therefore who might be eligible for our funds from the IDEAS levy, we do make reference to the Colorado State definition, which means that we have to kind of reference it. We have to acknowledge it, at least in some regard, for our community so that folks know who is eligible and who might be able to receive direct benefit from our funds. And then there's a final sentence there that says, see our resources and publications site. That is also, again, a clickable link. So anybody with access to the PowerPoint should be able to go there. And that's just on the IDEAS site. You can go and check those resources.
Excellent. Thank you. We're probably not saying something new to you, although maybe, or you haven't thought about it in a while. You probably know already about this, and that's why you're here. That's why you're listening or on the council. I was in a space where the doctors presenting, and then they asked me to come co-present with them. Well, two of them were doctors, and he had his master's in something I forget, and then me. And we were presenting. We were talking about IDD without ever checking with our audience. Do you know what that is? Are we on the same page? And we found that yeah, there was some difference. In fact, throughout the nationwide and beyond, there are some different definitions. It depends on the organization and their funding source and what they're doing. And then also, that's just checking, like, that was half a year ago, so that was in 2024. But let's scroll back 20 years. Was IDD being said and used? No. 10 years, 5 years. And then there's from region to region. Well, they said it at this at the school, but they say this at the day program, but they say this, just when I'm talking with other parents. So again, I don't think this is a one and done conversation. I wanted to bring it in. What is IDD? I feel like that's an important back to basics that we can revisit once or twice a year at this council. So thanks for holding space for this, and I'll pause now. And if others have stories or questions or thoughts they want to share, then you're welcome to. What is IDD? Do you have clarity on that? Do you have some voice, something to share or ask? Does it help to acknowledge? I'm just looking around. I don't see any hands raised or anything in the comment. Molly, please.
Hi, this is Molly Mason speaking. I'm sorry, I was trying to figure out how to actually raise my hand on the Zoom and my view changed. So I apologize for being late. One questioner that came to mind is the or in there, the general intellectual functioning or adaptive behavior. And that is yeah, and it's come up, I guess, in my both line of work and then also the individuals and wondering how that goes into play with our work with how we distribute the funds. That's the or. If it's either IQ or adaptive behavior and not both is something that I think would be good to make sure that we're all aware of and sharing with other agencies and organizations who are, in my experience, I've had a lot of it's an and not an or. So that's something that is just bringing up to me right now. Think about.
Yeah, thank you, Molly. And for clarity, remind me, please, is your background a special education teacher? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
If anybody from DHS feels like you want to address that, we can. Another option is to scroll that for when an RMHS representative may wish to join us and address that. So where would we like to go with Molly's question about the and versus or? Adaptive score. Michaela, please.
Hey y'all, it's Michaela speaking. Molly, thanks so much for joining us, and especially on spring break. Hope you're having your week is off to a good start. So my understanding is that the state designates different organizations called case management agencies or CMAs, which used to be referred to as community centered board. The one that we work with is Rocky Mountain Human Services, and they manage the majority of our mill levy funds. And through that state designation, part of their job is to make this determination of who meets criteria or under this definition, the state definition that Corey read aloud from. And a note on that, the link that we have on our website now references what is a now retired set of rules that govern the healthcare policy and financing department at the state. You may have heard it called HCPOF. So that definition has stayed pretty much the same. It's just a different citation. So just a little note for folks that we will be doing a rule change shortly here to update our program rules and update that citation. Our IDEAS rule does reference that definition, and we will be updating the citation to align with that. So Molly's question was, when someone goes to a CMA, let me know, Molly, if this is right, and they request a determination for IDD, that would help open the door for them to qualify for some benefits. Is it that they have to have a certain IQ on an IQ test and adaptive functioning, or can it be one or the other? So if their IQ is above the threshold set by the state, but their adaptive functioning by different assessments are below it, they could qualify. And it sounds like, Molly, in your experience, you have seen that some people may still have low adaptive functioning according to these assessments, but high IQ scores and are not receiving a determination. Is that correct?
Hi, this is Molly speaking. Yes, in some ways, and also the medical provider requiring that report from a medical provider and having a score through like specific medical providers and not accepting educational evaluations is something that has been happening. So that's the and that's both the IQ and adaptive and requiring medical. It's just there's different changes and different I've heard within, it's not just a me, but also other educators as well who have had different experiences with different providers within the CMAs and different case managers who are all trying to follow the rules. And I think there's just that there's different information and different confusion over who qualifies and what that can look like. And specifically, I'm working with all individuals who are under the age of 22. So there's that is clear at least, but then trying to navigate who qualifies and how to make sure that what the processes of qualifying is still, I'm still confused by it. So I feel like if I'm confused, I imagine that I know that there are other people who are also confused or still have different or told different information by different people. So I think that one thing I would really love within this council is to help us better educate both myself and in our community as well, to make it clear of who does qualify under IDD to receive these such great resources that are available, and to make sure that it is a clear process as best as we can. And I understand that we're all trying our best, and yeah, that's so thank you, Michaela. That is the question, like the and the or, and how and what documentation is needed to make it very clear, to follow the process and to make sure that the documentation is correct or acceptable documentation.
Thank you, Molly, so much for raising that confusion and that request. I might touch base with you one-on-one offline to learn a little bit more about what you're experiencing in the community. And then it sounds like you're asking for maybe at a future meeting to have some educational materials or a presentation on what that process is like and what materials are required.
Yes, I think that would be helpful. I know I have resources from the CMA, from Rocky Mountain Services, but I think some more specifics could be useful because the process still is confusing for a number of individuals and families who are trying to navigate it. So,
thank you, Molly.
Thank you.
Excellent. Corey, just doing a timing check-in. I believe this is the time when we take a break. Is that correct? Have we arrived at that part of the agenda?
Yeah, this is Corey speaking. We are a little behind, but
Yeah.
as I mentioned before, we don't have public comment, so that's kind of okay right now.
Okay.
But it'd
Before
probably
we
be
go
good.
to break, can I go back to where we're at? I just wanted to acknowledge on our break and do that timing. Molly, would you allow me to just praise you for a moment? Would that be agreeable to you? You're like, I don't know.
This is Molly speaking. I came late, so I didn't even get to do my,
Well,
so I apologize. I put it at 1:30 on my personal calendar. I apologize, guys.
as has been acknowledged, you joined us. But I want to elevate what you did and what Michaela did, because that's what we do. That's what IDEAS does. So it's not easy to unmute or type in the chat and be vulnerable and share your voice and say, I don't know. It's kind of confusing. It'd be good to get clear. Can anybody help me? Like, boy, there's so many songs in that. What I just said. Hello, Pink Floyd. Is there anybody out there? That's one. But and then Michaela, thank you for being responsive. And that is what IDEAS Advisory Council for the community members is all about. What just happened there, and yet it's not easy. It's not easy to be on camera or whatever the other, speak to the school psychologist or talk to, like you mentioned, the educational diagnosis versus the medical diagnosis, and even some of the people that are providing services. It's not as clear as it could. That's why I wanted to say a section about what is IDD, because we all have these varying and this is a chance to get some clarity, or even just to acknowledge that it could be clearer. So thank you. Thank you for applying for our council, and thank you for showing up today, and thank you for being honest. And Michaela, thank you for your response and interaction and offering to take that offline and dialogue some more. That is what we do here. So thank you both. Now, having said that, we can come back in half a year, in a year, what is IDD, and we can do more with this conversation. So thanks for being a part of just broaching it. And now we're going to go take a break. And in this time, you're invited to turn your camera off. You're invited to crack the window or do whatever you need to do. I'll stay around during the break. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
Yeah, so if everybody could return, please, at 2:08. We'll keep going.
So we're at 2:09, and that means I'm gonna go on to our next section, I think, which is the recommendations review and updates. So I think this is where we get to hear from our DHS staff that are rocking and rolling with this. Thank you so much for the energy and for supporting this council. So Michaela, is that you first, or who is with us first from DHS to share?
Yeah, I am happy to kick it off unless Corey is back, and then I'll happily hand it over to them since they prepared the slide and presentation. And I think they're actually working the slides too. So if it's all right with you all, we might just give Corey a minute or two.
Sure. And
Okay.
this is Michelle, that's fine.
I'm back. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Uh, okay, this is Corey speaking. Welcome back, everyone. Sorry it took a few extra minutes there, but we're probably ready to get right back into it if that's okay. I'll just lead right into the next agenda topic if my chairs are okay with that. We are going to talk about the prior council recommendations, and then so we're going to review those, and then we have updates for you as well. The purpose of this discussion is just to kind of go back through a little bit of the history of different recommendations that the council has given us, give some updates on the status of some of those recommendations and what those recommendations may have led to, and then ask of the council what the council's current priorities are. In future agendas, we'll talk about a lot of the things that we talk about every year, such as financial updates, contract updates, things like that. So it's important for us to kind of know, at least at a base level, what the council's priorities are. In the past, the council has made it very clear that housing is the prioritization of all extra funds for them to go to. Now, we don't necessarily need to say that same language for your priorities now, but it is good to know that if there is extra funding or extra space for us to look into new requests for proposals or programming or expansion of services or anything like that, that the council would like us to prioritize things like housing inclusion, gaps in services, or specific topics like that. So I'm going to go forward here. Now, I sent each of you our little recommendation tracker. That has recommendations all the way back to way before I was on the council here and part of DHS. So feel free on your own to go and look at the specifics of those. I invite you to ask any of us questions about specific recommendations and the work that we've done for them. If you look back into 2019 and see that there's some specific recommendation that you're very interested in, you'd like to know more about it, then reach out to us. What we're going to talk about today is going to be a little bit more high level, simply because there's just a little bit too much history for me to go through all of it and then offer you all the opportunity to discuss that fully in depth. So with that, I'll go to the slide here and let you know what our current contracts are. So currently, we are working with Rocky Mountain Human Services. Now that is the CMA of Denver. That is our primary contract. And so a lot of direct client services, early intervention, other things go through that. So that contract doesn't necessarily come from a specific recommendation from the council. That contract comes from the way the system runs here in Colorado, in which there are case management agencies, previously community-centered boards that provide direct services. So that's the main one there. But then further than that, we also contract with Rocky Mountain Human Services for the Denver START program, which comes from a recommendation based on our needs assessment, asking to prioritize mental health support for people with developmental and intellectual disabilities. So START provides those services: mental health, crisis responding, and mental health support. We also work with Autism Community Store for the Sensory Friendly Denver program. That is based off of a recommendation for true inclusion. That recommendation also provided a contract for us through Point B to provide community-based different community initiatives promoting inclusion. That contract ended about a year ago, a little bit more than a year ago at this point. So that one's there. We also have the Be Home Housing Navigators. These are this comes from a housing recommendation, of which we've had a few actually in the past. Then there's the Denver Public Library's Digital Navigators, which come from technology and digital access recommendations. And then we also now have our Voices 2025 mini grants, which are not quite executed, but almost there, which also come from an inclusion recommendation, but also a more recent recommendation, as you can see on this slide here, from July of 2023. If you have any interest in our current programs, current contracts, you can go to denvergov.org/IDDEAS to look at those. We've had contracts in the past that have come from other recommendations as well. Those contracts have ended and they're no longer there. So again, if you go back to any of those old recommendations and you are interested in the kind of work that might have been done that I'm not covering in depth here right now, then please just reach out and we'll gladly give you more information. We'll gladly talk through it with you so that you can understand the kind of work we've been doing. So some more recent recommendations that have had also some updates and recent work tied to them. So back in 2021, there's actually a lot of recommendations made in 2021, but a few that we've had our eye on are improving technology and digital access, to which there's been different work performed on that, again, with the public libraries and promoting digital navigators there. And then multiple housing recommendations also made in 2021, which those resulted in a lot of different work, but we have our eye on different things, including state advocacy and other work related to the housing realm. More recently, in May of 2023, the recommendation was made by the council to begin investigating solutions to a direct workforce crisis and implement funding routes to address the crisis. That is in progress. In July of 2023, the recommendation was made for DHS to explore potential programs for empowerment, self-advocacy, identity, and choice for people with IDD in various events, trainings, and other potential modes of inclusion, also known as Voices. That resulted in the Voices mini grants, which are $50,000 mini grants, adding up to a total of $500,000 to be provided to local providers to promote inclusion, as described. And then August of last year, we had 7 recommendations that were approved by the council based on the Kelsey's Landlords and Builders Assessment. Some of those recommendations have varying different levels of work and review on them right now. And that Landlord and Builders Assessment also came from another housing recommendation back in 2021 that the council made. Any of my team is welcome to jump in and fill in any of the blanks that they wish for me to fill in on their specific areas of expertise there. But overall, this is a very, very high level general gist of the types of things that we've been working on. And what I also want the council to kind of know from this is that as you make recommendations, we do take them and we do a lot of different things with them. Sometimes it is straight up, take a recommendation, we go for a request for proposals, or in the case of Voices, a request for mini grant applications, things like that. Others maybe require research and us to kind of investigate what work might look like for that, and then maybe a further recommendation coming from that, kind of like what happened with the Kelsey's Landlord and Builder Assessment. There's a recommendation made to kind of get a look at housing here in Denver. Then that assessment came, which produced more recommendations. And then there's other things. There are prior recommendations that we've had from a few years ago that are either just something that wasn't feasible or maybe isn't relevant now, that we have kind of relegated into a less of a priority, or something that is just not not worth working on at the moment. So yeah, so that's the general high level review of our different recommendations. As I mentioned, I sent out that form. We track that and update that as we kind of go through and either receive new recommendations or work on old recommendations. So please refer to that if you're ever interested. And if it's not accessible, as it is kind of an older form now and with a lot on it, then just let me know. And I'm more than happy to kind of run through it with any individual council member and kind of give you the lowdown of like, hey, here's what our recommendation was and here's what we've done for it. Okay. So knowing that we've done a little bit of work here, I am just going to give a moment for, again, my team members to kind of chime in if they want to, before just turning it over to the council to now discuss their potential priorities that they might have.
Thanks, Corey. This is Jordan. I think that was great. I don't have really anything to add other than that. If anyone has any questions related to any of the housing recommendations, there's a lot, and a lot of them have a lot of factors and details around them that can get a little bit complex. I'm always happy to answer any questions that I can or meet with you one-on-one to talk more specifically about them.
Thank you. That was Jordan Mulholland, who works at the Department of Human Services and specializes in the housing endeavors and folks with IDD. Thank you for your work.
Yeah. Okay, well, with that, then I would like to invite council members to maybe discuss either individual recommendations they are curious about or interested in, or just from their ties to the community and their general knowledge. What priorities do you all have as council members? So as we think about these recommendations and move forward to work on them, what would you advise, as advisory council members, us to have our eye more closely on? Go ahead, Brian.
Brian B, question, are we doing, is part of what we're doing to support folks with IDD, does that include education and engagement of those who do not necessarily already know or have or connect with IDD? Is part of our initiative like education of general people or engagement so that there's an event that's not just for people with IDD, but also for others? Pass.
This is Corey talking. Let me just make sure I understand your question here, and I'll open it up. I don't have to be the answerer of the question, but so you're asking about education. Do you mean education and outreach maybe, or connection to people who don't know that they're eligible for services, or are you talking about education for people outside of IDD? Sorry, sorry if I'm just misunderstanding it.
No, that's okay. Thank you for asking for clarity. Let me try and explain it this way. I have found, so the people with disabilities are a minority. They happen to be one of the largest minorities on the planet Earth, but nonetheless a minority. And people with disabilities have to live in a world where there's many that don't have that. And so I found that in effectively addressing supports or funding or whatever it is for people with disabilities, including IDD, it's best to engage them with others who are not necessarily disabled, not necessarily already an ally, because that's most of the world that they're going to live in. That's not all of the world. Sometimes you're going to go to a day program and there's plenty of others there with disabilities and so on. I'm going to pause there because I may have said enough because I see Michaela has her hand up. I hope I clarified for you, Corey, and if not, I can say more.
Thanks, Brian. This is Michaela speaking. Such a great question and a really great point about how, I think different ways that we can work to create a more inclusive community for folks with IDD by targeting education outreach to the broader community. What I think of when you ask that question is some of the project that we've worked on under the umbrella of inclusion, which is something that Corey has really championed for us over the last couple years. And so I think of the Autism Community Stores contract that we have called Sensory Friendly Denver, in which they go out and identify public spaces that are commonly visited by all of Denverites, including folks with IDD. And Shannon and the folks at Autism Community Store provide recommendations to these places, public libraries, venues, the airport, for example, about how to make those spaces more inclusive and accessible for folks that have sensory processing needs that might be different from neurotypical folks. And then I also think a lot about the voices work that we're doing right now. We are put out a procurement to do exactly that, to kind of talk about inclusive opportunities that would engage both people with IDD and people without IDD in community with one another. So those are some of our active things, and we have kind of a history of other contracts that we have executed along that line. But I think let me know if I answered your question or if that kind of gets to what you were asking about. And I would also, love for Corey to fill in anything I missed, because that is definitely their area of expertise.
Excellent. Thank you, Michaela. That does get to some of my stuff.
I could fill in some more, but I don't know that I have to. Jordan, you got your hand up, so why don't you go ahead, Jordan?
I was just going to add, we do have one active recommendation around educating property managers and landlords on how to engage with people with IDD. And so that's definitely on our radar, and kind of, I think there's a lot that we can do in that realm as well. Knowing that in order to access housing, we need to have good supportive landlords to be there as well.
Excellent. I just put in the chat a link example to, it's just a 2-minute video that I think would be fun to maybe watch here at this council sometime. And the lady goes, special needs. If I needed to order dinosaur eggs at the restaurant, that would be special. And then they came up with a couple of other examples. She goes, but needing housing, needing help with groceries, is that so special? That's what humans do. And so it was what I call edutainment. It's and I think that's beyond the scope of doing a video like that. But and then all that specific stuff that Michaela mentioned and then Jordan mentioned, engaging landlord tenants, that's absolutely important. Thank you. Pass.
Go ahead, Lynn.
Hi, this is Lynn Cutter with DHS. Jordan's mention of some landlord recommendations also made me think that it might be a good place to share the work that we're doing with Denver Public Library. One of the things that we're specifically doing through that collaborative project is providing professional development and training for the entire Denver Public Library Digital Navigators team. So when anybody who walks into the library, so they're better able to serve the entire population of folks in Denver. And so that's a very intentional example of expanding knowledge and education. So the idea is to provide resources and opportunities for that entire team. Does that make sense? I'm seeing a bunch of thumbs up floating around, so I'm all done. I don't know if I'm handing it back to Brian or Corey.
I'll take it while I can. This is Corey talking. So, Brian, you've heard, I think, a little bit from each of us here about the potential education to other people, community providers, and connections that maybe aren't specifically an individual with IDD, but maybe somebody who we'd either like to more inclusively interact with our community of people within IDD in different ways. My question is going to come back to you now, though. So you've heard about that, and to fill in some more information after what Michaela said, Voices does have, we have provided mini grants to different people who hopefully will be advocating and bringing awareness and bringing an inclusive interaction to different community providers, businesses, and family members, whoever else, about IDD and all that. But is that enough? You pose a question to us. Do you think that what we've said, does that satisfy your interest in the education of people and therefore the potential spillover or indirect benefits we might be providing to our community on behalf of people with IDD? Or do you think that needs to be a higher priority for you?
Yeah, thank you very much, Corey. Like Lynn, I was also like, am I facilitating this or is Corey? So, but when you had your hand up, I like how you just jumped in there. My answer with my tendency is I want to turn that to the council of the voting members and ask you all, are you satisfied? I am very pleased with what Lynn and Jordan and Corey and Michaela had to share just now. Very pleased. And so I would say, keep on keeping on. What about you all? Do you feel like I see Michelle just gave some jazz hands. I love that. Hey, Molly, come on in.
Hi, this is Molly. I agree. DHS, you guys are doing a great job. I wonder though, or an idea that I had when I was looking at this form, which Corey, I really appreciate you sharing the recommendation status to kind of see the history of everything, and where things are at. One of the things that came by notice was the direct workforce crisis. And thinking about a challenge for a lot of individuals with IDD in our community, finding competitive employment and finding employment if they're interested in it, right? And what that looks like. So, and a barrier and an area I think for growth within our community would be businesses understanding more about the wonderful benefits of working with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and hiring people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and being able to work with job coaches and being able to work with just how it benefits everyone in the community and their business too. So wondering about kind of, Lynn, like you were saying, that education to libraries, it's wonderful and great, and like how we can if it would be possible to kind of connect with the businesses in our community for educating, and then also encouraging them to understand, to be able to hire more people with disabilities if they are interested, because it's such a barrier. And there's so many, that's been my experience. So I think that's an idea, or just like if that would be an option. Yeah, sustainable employment. Thank you, Brian. Right. So like really encouraging that and getting our businesses to really, yeah, follow through and employ and like hire, employ, train, and empower our community more would be really, it's an area of growth, I think, and wondering if that could be a focus, if that would be possible. So I yield to.
Please go ahead, Lynn.
Is it okay if I go? We're trying to have a blend of conversation and sort of adhering to decorum. Hi, this is Lynn. I think what I'm hearing Molly talk about is a bit different than the workforce item that is kind of under research. Was focused more on helping support there being a direct care workers, direct support providers. It's an area that I know the state's looking at also, but what I'm hearing Molly suggest is, I think, a bit different than that current recommendation, which is the reason I'm speaking is because it was on one of my tasks to do some research and to do some preliminary thinking. So I think I'm hearing something maybe a little bit new and different than what Corey had shared briefly about some previous recommendations.
Yeah, I can jump in on this, I guess. This is Corey speaking. So when I mentioned the direct care workforce crisis recommendation, as Lynn said, that was in response to two articles that came out in 2022, I think. Colorado Sun article and an ANCOR article about the state of the workforce of direct care staff who support people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and therefore the ramifications of that workforce being woefully understaffed. They called it a crisis, which it was. And Molly, what you and so clarify for us in case we're misunderstanding, what you're asking though is less of focusing on the direct care workers who work at PASAs and other places to support people with developmental disabilities, and more for employment opportunities that is sustainable for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Is that your question? Just for clarity.
Yes, this is Molly. Thank you for clarifying. Correct. Yes, I did not realize that that was what the workforce, but kind of understanding that if that could be a priority or a focus. And Brian, I just saw in the chat. Yes, Employment First Colorado is a great organization too. And kind of how we could, if it would be within the council's purview, or if that would be something to be able to focus specifically in mind with businesses and education, and also like Brian, to your point of educating the more masses, the general public, about individuals with IDD and helping to break down those barriers for employment. If that would be something, that would be an option.
Go ahead, Michaela.
Hey all, it's Michaela. Molly, thank you so much. And Corey, I'd love to run this by you, but I think we're probably pretty aligned in saying that, yes, absolutely, Molly. If at any point you would like to engage your fellow council members and, making another formal recommendation to us about, creating new pathways to employment as something you'd like us to look into as another funding avenue, you absolutely can do that. You can, of all these recommendations listed, you can say, hey, we want you to do more work on this, or we like the work you're doing on this, but you don't need to do any more of it, or we still want you to prioritize this, or like you said, Molly, something completely new. So, I think, yeah, that's very much within the purview of the council, and we definitely welcome any new recommendations at any time. Did I get that right, Corey?
Sorry. Yep, I think so. I don't have anything to add to that. So yeah.
Michelle, please.
So this is Michelle and Molly. I'm saying, absolutely, when we talk about folks housing, well, if it's really, really hard to tackle the issue of housing until you tackle the issue of employment, because I don't know where they give away free houses, but somebody has that in a memo somewhere, please do send it to me because I need to be first in line. And so, Molly, if there's a time that we can connect to, maybe if we can, and anybody else, I'm just saying, yes, I want to figure out how to maybe create a recommendation or just to help say, yeah, we need to take some direction in that.
This is Molly. Great, thank you guys. Yes, and Michelle, I'd be happy to work with you offline or like whatever it looks like to be able to make a recommendation or what that looks like. So please let me know what I can do. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Corey talking. Just on that, a recommendation can come pretty naturally out of this council at any time if you'd like. What we ask that you do when you want it to be formal, as opposed to just kind of like letting us know where your interests lie and all that. If you want to make a formal recommendation and therefore an ask of us as DHS employees to do formal work in response to, then simply word it however the best you can. And you say, I would like to recommend that DHS do ABC, in this case, explore opportunities to fund or promote employment for people with IDD, sustainable employment for people with IDD, and ask for a second and ask for a vote. We vote it, we memorialize it into the meeting minutes, and then it goes on to this list of recommendations that we have here, and we do work on it. That work that comes after might vary, right? It doesn't always look the same. We might get a recommendation, and then the work that comes after is we explored it, and here's what's happening in the community that's either related to it. Here's where our money, is in the context of this, and therefore how much we could afford to it. All that, we'll give you information. But doing that at least gets us going to be able to find those kinds of answers for you, to be able to kind of say, okay, yep, Molly and the rest of the council recommended that we explore sustainable employment for people with IDD and fund this. And therefore now we have an RFP out, and, some company out there that specializes in this, or even is just maybe doesn't specialize in this, has now expanded their employment opportunities for people with IDD because we funded them to do so. Something like that. But feel free to, you don't have to do that right now today. Feel free to get together individually and talk about these things, bring it back to the council at a future meeting and say like, okay, this is how I want it worded. This is what I would like. And um, and then we put it up there. And we can always work out the language of it too. Language is a little important because then that really spells out for us what we want you to do. So if you were to say something like, we want, DHS to fund an employment opportunity, that could be literally us paying Walmart to fund 3 positions for people with IDD, right? As opposed to, we want DHS to explore sustainable employment in the Denver community for people with IDD in some other way, and that means that maybe we'll work with a contractor to then promote advocacy and awareness education to community partners that might have more widespread reach. So the language can be a little important in that example there. Hope that isn't more confusing, but just kind of think about that. like I said, you don't need to come to us today with a recommendation. You can talk to Michelle with that. For today, the reason that I bring all this to you is just to kind of hear this conversation. So I know Michelle has an eye on housing. I know Molly has an eye on employment. I know Brian has an eye on community education, awareness, and advocacy, as he always does, you know. That's all super helpful for us as a team to hear, so that as we do look back at these recommendations, we know like housing's still up there. Housing's not, nobody solved it yet. It's still important. And, you know, and so therefore we need to keep it as a conversation. We need to keep exploring these recommendations. Jordan can't retire yet, but, you know, so keep having these discussions, keep conversing about this. And if you want to bring up a formal recommendation, you can do that. Otherwise, keep letting us know what these priorities are and what's important to you. Michaela, go ahead.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much, Corey. And just a little reminder, as we were talking about reevaluating priorities and perhaps making new formal recommendations, which is amazing. Thank you so much. Keep them coming. Just consider again your conflict of interest forms that you've got filed. If you have any conflicts of interest, that's totally fine. You know, we still want you to serve on the council, but just kind of be thinking in the back of your head, like, oh, I serve on a board that does housing work. It looks like we might be making a recommendation related to housing. I should probably recuse myself. Or, oh, you know, my mom is the CEO of this nonprofit that works for, you know, sustainable employment. You know, I don't want that to be perceived as a conflict. And also, I mean, the biggest thing here too is we wouldn't want to prevent a really great organization from being awarded a contract or being able to apply because there could have been the possibility of a conflict of interest. So just to make sure that we're leaving options open, if we're moving towards a recommendation or it looks like we could be moving towards a recommendation, just go ahead and raise your hand. Let us know. Well, you know, you can excuse yourself from the meeting for a moment and we'll let you know when you can come back in.
I'll call on you, Corey.
Okay. I don't mean to take away the time for you to talk either though, but just to kind of help maybe clarify from Michaela's point there. Yes, this is actually very important. I know I just said like recommendations are easy and great and all of that, but it is definitely important to try to be forward thinking in the kinds of recommendations that you are engaged in talking about and voting on. Voting is a public record, and we do that intentionally. We try to build trust in our communities so they know how our council is making these decisions and that they have the community's interests in mind. So as an example, in this case, we're talking about, we'll talk about a lot of things, but let's talk about sustainable employment as one. If any of y'all are a business owner of any kind and you make this recommendation, you vote on it, and then we go to RFP, and then we see that your business has applied to potentially give jobs to people with IDD, as well-meaning as it may be. It might be great. It might be a super awesome proposal that you created for us. It still doesn't look too great because you made the recommendation that then could have generated a little bit of a flow of funds towards your individual organization that you have a clear financial investment in, and that's a conflict of interest. So keep that kind of stuff in mind. So as you talk about recommendations, you talk about things that you want us to do as meaningful work, to put out RFPs, to direct them to levy funds to, be very mindful of who you are related to, who you are financially tied to, and then therefore will you be doing this. It's totally fine to have the expertise of being a business owner who wants to provide work for people that need. You can make the recommendation, you can vote on it, and then just not apply. And then boom, you're okay because no funds went your way from that recommendation or any other recommendations tied to it. And that's all right. You can also just abstain from votes and recuse yourself from the discussion, knowing that we're going to be talking about it, knowing that you might want to place a bid in the future on those kinds of things. So I know it's tough to predict the future, but do try to be kind of forward thinking about when you are making a recommendation and any relationships that you have that might be involved in the work that comes from that recommendation. Go ahead, Brian.
Right on. Thank you, Michaela and Corey, for the reminder about the conflict of interest and how we're serving here. Brian B. And I want to, I think we're running up on our time, so I'll do this as short as I can. I'd like to hear, the Office of Disability. I might be getting the name wrong, but it was a recently created. Um, do you know? I need some head nods if you know what I'm talking about. Danny is over at Office of the newly created Office of Disability. I'd love to see the IDEAS Advisory Council um, inviting some of the ones who are awarded. They just had this RFP that just closed last week, and um, up to 100,000 per applicant. And I'd love to see what crossover there is between what we're doing and what they're doing, because I know some of the applicants and they're trying to address the IDD population. So not if I'm speaking English. Shake your head no if that was all Greek. If you're like, what are you even talking about? All right, so yeah, and I will pass perhaps maybe to Michelle now to wrap us out in our final 10 minutes.
Okay, so we didn't have public comment. We have just one other little section, and I would imagine that we are kind of there, which is, are there things that we want to talk about in our upcoming meetings? So Brian, for example, just gave I also forgotten Danny's new office, OD, Office of Disability, something D. So I have to look it up myself. But what are the topics that we would love to talk about? And of course, we don't have to try to brainstorm now for the entire year's upcoming agenda, but uh, let us try to think about it. And if there's anything that's on your mind, let's maybe share now if you can think of something. And if you can't think of something, then let's email me, Brian, Corey, to get some topics. Now, I do have a topic that uh, that I'd like to suggest that we have in our agenda. So we have mentioned, uh, and Corey, please remind me because I do suffer from can't remember stuff, itis. How many voices awardees do we have? Did we have?
Yeah, we have 12
Okay, so what I'd like to,
potentially.
okay.
Yeah.
So what I'd like on our agenda, if we could have maybe two or one or two per meeting, just kind of come and give us, what they're doing with their award. I'd love to hear from them. They could just be even if we, for our organization, for our scheduling, if we said during the public comment time, if we invited them to come, so that maybe they can be here the whole meeting, maybe they cannot be here the whole meeting, but if we peg the time that we ask them to come and share with us, because then they'd be also recorded for the community, that if they could come and share just maybe 3 minutes or five, let's work it out. But I'd like to hear from those folk through the year.
Yeah, this is Corey speaking. I think that's a lovely idea, Michelle. And I know a few of them would for sure want to do that. And so I think that that is an ask we can offer to them, but I don't want to make required of them at this time. We haven't executed all of our contracts with them yet. And so, you know, just being that there is always a chance that not all of them get fully finalized or whatever. Though I don't think that'll happen. But either way, so we're still kind of in the process, very close to finishing our scopes and then getting those agreed upon and all set and ready to go. Once we execute, then we will be able to publicize who has received funds for that, and which we will gladly do and tout. And then I think I can start working on inviting them to come to our council meeting. And 3 to 5 minute high level overview, I think is more than reasonable. There's always a chance that maybe some of them are busy. Like I said, I don't know that we as a group maybe can't require it of them, but we can at least offer it to them. And I don't know why people wouldn't jump on the opportunity to come and talk about all the great stuff they're doing. But that's kind of like the most I can say to that right now. But I think I've written that down on my haphazard notepad here. So I would definitely keep that going, and we can try to get um, maybe 2 or 3 of them per meeting to come and say what they're doing.
So I just want to make sure I have clarity on process.
Hmm.
Um, at some point, they will have been awarded this money, and you, DHS will have received what their scopes are of what they're going to be doing with the award, correct?
Sort of. So they haven't been awarded the money yet. We haven't
Correct.
disseminated any funds to anybody yet. We will. We are the ones that are drawing up the scopes of what they'll be doing, and then not giving them to them, but reviewing them with them, and
Okay,
then we'll disseminate funds in 3 installments. First one being once those contracts are executed, and then once they give us midterm report, and then the final time once we give the final report and the work's all done. And yeah, so they've I won't get into the whole process right now.
sure.
There's a lot to it, but generally that's kind of what we're doing. So we're
Well,
creating the scopes, and then you know
I'd love to, after the scopes have been created, um, I'd love to give them the opportunity to raise their voice in this public space. And so, seeing how we had some input that we said, hey, this is what we'd like to hear as a community. And then DHS was like, okay, well, let's just make this a thing. And then let's figure out how. And so we have, you guys created this grant for this money and these things. After all of that has been taken care of, I think it makes a lot of sense for them to be given a public space to share what they're working on, because that's how they got to the point of being awarded something. So, not too early, but certainly not too late is what I'm saying. I'd love to just give them the opportunity to share out what they're working on after after all of it has been agreed upon.
correct. You got it. Okay, this is Corey speaking again. Thank you so much, Michelle, for that agenda item. Um, I invite everybody and anybody to please give me agenda items. So if you have, maybe you're not ready to make a recommendation yet, and you would rather bring it to this public forum where everybody can talk together about a topic, email it to me and let me know. Say like, in the context of today, we talked about educating community partners, we talked about housing, we talked about employment. If you want to talk, that could be an agenda item. We could talk about that. We could bring that here, and we can discuss it, And so please feel empowered. This is your council. Feel empowered to talk about the things that you want to talk about. I do have some agenda setting to do, and so there are some, contractually required topics that we will have to sometimes talk about. Next month, we are planning to go over the budget and the finances um, to see where we're all at. And hopefully that will inform y'all's kind of ideas of priorities and recommendations as well. So it's kind of a two-part conversation that we're having this month and next month. Um, and then there's also different contracts that we'll need to report out, such as Rocky Mountain Human Services START program and a few others. And so I have all that. And if you're interested to know, like, when I've kind of got those slotted up, let me know. Again, this is kind of your council, and I want to make sure that you guys have full input and knowledge of like how it's being run and what we're talking about. I'm also going to ask this. Previously, it was requested that we meet in person. And so I was wondering if the group that is gathered here today would like to try to start planning that for April or for May. I would really appreciate getting together in person, either April or May prior to June, because I think that would be great. And so last month, if folks remember, we did have a little bit of a consensus that a committee would be formed on this, and we haven't talked too much further on that. What I think I will do, since we only have a minute left right now, is reach out to you all electronically to see who would like to be part of that and who would like to help with planning an in-person get-together in these next 2 months here, if that would be who of us. And that would be great.
Hey, Corey,
I did. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Brian B. I could swear Michelle and somebody else already, it was two people. Was Michelle, didn't somebody else offer to pair up with you for that? Am I?
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
I don't know if it was Alexa, but somebody else likes to eat with, and we.
Oh,
Sure.
definitely. This is Alexa. You can count me in.
So Alexa, let's get together and figure out when. And I see that, yes, I know we're right at time, but I do see Jessica brought up a fabulous question, which is, hey, what about those minutes?
Yeah. So yes, I see that question in there too. We're gonna set that on the agenda for next month. That's we just don't have enough time to kind of go through them right now. So that's the best I can offer you. So I will resend them for anybody who maybe it got buried in their email or anything like that. I will send them alongside this month's meeting minutes, and we'll at next month at the head of the meeting we'll go through both of them together, talk about revisions if we need any, and approve them at that point.
I like to be on the record that I recommended that DHS just solve everybody's problem and for all Denverites with the IDD, and then but I didn't hear any comment to that, so I guess we have to wait. But now that we're at time, uh, could I don't think we have any other pressing things, but could we have a motion to close out the meeting or a motion to let Brian sing us out? That either one of those motions would be fine.
Brian, I motion that we close.
Dang it, this is Michelle. I will second that since he didn't want a motion to sing.
He wants
Okay.
to drum all day.
So if we can vote in the chat to go ahead and close out the meeting, and
For
that would be.
closing the meeting, well, thanks for voting, everybody. But for closing, we don't necessarily need to vote. But good job, everyone. Appreciate it. It does make it just more better, I guess. But awesome. Thank you. We are adjourned at 3:02 p.m.
Bye, everyone. And